welcome to the Reading Room. My name is Dee, and today I'm going to be talking about Moby Dick by Herman Melville. A few weeks ago I was watching some BookTube, and a gentleman was going through why you should read Moby Dick. I didn't finish the video, but I realized I had never read Moby Dick, so I decided to pick up a copy and go through it. What I did before I read it is I wrote down some of the expectations that I had going into the read, and then that would just give me some talking points after finishing the read. So I was not expecting an easy read because it was written in 1851 at a time where a lot of the language was just very dense, long sentences. Number two, I was expecting a slower paced read. It wasn't something you just pick up and just kind of go through. I knew there was going to be several words I was probably going to have to look up, getting used to the language, especially with a lot of the nautical terms I was not familiar with. So I wasn't really expecting to be able to pick this up and get through it in a day or two. I knew it was going to take probably several sessions to complete the book. Number three was dictionary, getting a workout. And then number four was expecting it to meet the high praise that it's received as one of the greatest English literature novels of all time, or up there with some of the greatest English novels of all time. So I finished it, and it was not what I was expecting. I was expecting the story of Ahab and the chase after the great white whale, which I would say only constitutes about half the book. The other half of the book is Herman Melville talking about whales as a species and whaling as an industry. Very in-depth information. He researched it, and it was a lot of information to take in on this already slow-paced read. I thought it made it a little bit slower because you were going about 7 to 9 chapters of the story, and then you would interrupt it for a few chapters with something about whaling, and it was kind of a build-up. You talk about going out and whaling, talk about how they capture the whales, what they do with the whales once they get them in, when they're stripping their blubber, getting the spermaceti from their heads to make the oil, which is the main reason why they went out to get whales. Whale oil was very highly sought after. So that for me, it was just so much information to take in. I was already struggling with a lot of the nautical terms, trying to figure out what a mizzenmast was or where the leeward side of the boat was. So all this extraneous information threw me off, and it's because I was not expecting it. Now, if I do a second read going into it, knowing that content is in there, it probably will be an easier read. The story itself is really good. I enjoyed the narrative. The Ishmael character, who, if he's the one that narrates the whole book, then he goes from being kind of just an observer to being a expert in whales and whaling industry. So some great characters. Queequeg, I don't know how to say it. Of course, Ahab himself, although I as large as life as Ahab is in popular and literature culture, I didn't see quite that level of character development. He comes out, I want the whale, we're going to get the whale at all cost. And that's kind of how he pursues through the book. There is a point where he's talking to one of the other people that are in charge of the ship when he's in his cabin or whatever, and he's talking about being able to see his family again, and maybe he should just turn the boat around. And this person's trying to convince him, he's like, yeah, I want to see my family too, let's go. But then he snaps out of it, and they're going back after the whale. Another interesting thing here, and I didn't catch the significance of this until afterwards when I finished reading it, and then I went and did a little bit of research on it. But there's these things called gams, and so say you're a whaling boat and you're heading out, and then maybe there's a whaling boat coming in, or they're passing you on their way to go somewhere. You have gams where the captains. One of the captains will go to the other captain's ship, and then the second in command will go to the other ship. They'll swap information, stories, drink. There's various things that they could do. But each time that they have this gam, all that Ahab is focused on is, have you seen the white whale? Where's the white whale? The first couple ships, they haven't seen the white whale and dismisses them and goes off. And as each of these gams occur, like one ship, they're coming back from a celebratory. They filled their boat with all the whale oil. They're going to be very well paid, and they want to celebrate. But Ahab only wants the white whale. Another ship comes in, and they just basically, I guess you could say, gotten their ass handed to them by the white whale. But now that Ahab knows that it's out there, wow, whatever, I gotta go. Another boat comes by, and the captain's son is adrift at sea, and they've also seen the white whale, and they ask for Ahab's help, and he's like, basically, no, can't help you, and then he goes off to pursue the white whale. So it was these gams, these encounters with these ships, as each one had some kind of different situation going on with them, where they needed to interact with Ahab in some form, whether it's to celebrate, for help, exchange information. But he had his blinders on. All his focus was going after the white whale. So that's where I thought a lot of the character, at least thinking back now that I understand that the gams are a little bit more, were a little bit more symbolic and central to the story. Since I was so caught up in the extraneous information of the chapters about whaling, I missed that. But thinking back, that was definitely a punctuation on Ahab's state of mind, which did give the character development that I felt was lacking as I read the story. Went back in hindsight and kind of put those pieces together. I enjoyed it. It was a good read. I watched a booktuber that talked about if you did struggle with the book, and I did. I had to look up a lot of the words, and it actually got to be the point where it was affecting my experience with a novel, having to stop and look up all these words. So I kind of made a compromise. If it was a word I didn't understand, let's say it was an adjective, and I got the gist of the sentence, I wouldn't look it up. But if it was a verb, something that was driving the action of the sentence or the paragraph, and I couldn't quite place it, then I would stop and look it up. So, but they suggested reading the Norton Critical version, which is heavily annotated as you read, and so you can kind of like I said, struggle with the nautical terms. There's a lot of references in here to say Stoicism. I caught some Stoicism stuff talking about Seneca, but Roman, Greek, just a lot of different references that somebody that was educated at the time Herman Melville was educated would just fly off the page, and they would know what they meant. But now that the novel is 160, 170 years old, if you haven't exposed yourself to a lot of these references are going to possibly just kind of fly by, and you're not going to understand them. Some of them I didn't. I would jot notes down to look it up. I don't think I have followed up on those. And some of the stuff I understood, because having read a lot, that does help as you're referencing things. So, but the Norton Critical Edition, as opposed to all the annotations being in the back of the book, I really don't like having to and then go look and then read and okay, I got to go look. So having things annotated as you're reading it will make it a lot easier. So I do plan to reread Moby Dick. I would recommend that anybody that likes classics, enjoys reading, that hasn't read it, at least try to read it once. Like I said, it has a very high place in literary circles as one of the greatest English novels. But I will read the Norton Critical Edition the next time I reread it. I don't know when I'll reread it. I did take some notes, found some pretty good quotes. Two things that stuck out to me was chapter 10, A Bosom Friend, when Ishmael, before he goes on his whaling ship, he's in this town, he's looking for accommodations for the night. They're full up, but they're like, hey, if you want to share a bed with this person, then we can fit you in. And the person's a cannibal, a pagan, and he's very, I guess, scared. He's just very concerned about having to share a room with this person. When he gets in bed, they're out sailing shrunken heads. And it's Quake. I know we'll call him QQ because I really don't know how to pronounce it. But QQ comes back to the room. He's getting settled in. He prays to his God, and it disarms and bothers Ishmael. But after getting to know him in chapter 10, he's talking about, and the chapter's called A Bosom Friend. He takes on this very interesting mindset, doing to others. You know, God's will is you want somebody to pray with you and pray to your God. Well, pray with them and pray to their God, because after all, that is God's will as he establishes it. And it's a very open-minded concept that I think maybe some religions and some people that I have at least encountered have lost in it. And so yeah, I highlighted it. I actually read the chapter twice. I read it and it's like, wow. And I went back and I read it again. And then the other area that I did highlight that kind of stuck with me is when Starbuck is talking about vengeance on a dumb brute is basically some type of blasphemy. You know, why do you care what this thinkless animal did to you? And then goes into this monologue. You know, if man will strike through the mask. To me, the white whale is that wall shoved near to me. Sometimes I think there's not beyond, but 'tis enough. That inscrutable thing is chiefly what I hate. And be the white whale agent or be the white whale blasphemy man, I'd strike the sun if it insulted me. That was just great dialogue. I highlighted it and annotated it, and in my book journal I also wrote it in there so I would know that to go back to it. So that's basically all I got to say about Moby Dick. Like I said, definitely recommended it. A lot of my expectations that I had that I talked about at the beginning of the video definitely came true. I could see where it met its high praise, but I don't think I enjoyed it as much as I should have, because I was thrown off by the 50% of the book being basically nonfiction about whaling and about whales themselves. So I definitely think a second read, when I know that's going to be there, will allow me to dig deeper into the narrative side of it and pull out a lot of the themes and the things that I did notice that Melville did, even in the chapters that were nonfiction, where he talks about something and then he seems to make it a metaphor for some kind of human condition or emotion or situation. So I will reread Moby Dick, going into it knowing what to expect, and I do expect a better reading experience. Not that it was a bad reading experience. I enjoyed it. I'm glad I got to indulge in a classic, is taking a palate cleanser from some of the Dune novels I was written. So yep, Moby Dick, Herman Melville. If you like classic literature and you haven't read it, I definitely suggest picking it up and giving it a go. Thanks for tuning in.